is Bill Osmolsky, and welcome to the Rock County Calendar. This is an experiment in citizen journalism. You might have been seeing the ads for Facebook on this movement lately, but thanks to recent leaps in technology, pretty much anyone can become a journalist with a platform and hold their local officials accountable. So hopefully, it's my hope that this experiment will inspire others to do the same. My focus is on Northern Rock County in Wisconsin, and tonight I'm going to be talking about our annual meeting that we just had this past Monday. Now, annual meetings are something special in Wisconsin. Any resident who shows up to these meetings is allowed to vote on the resolutions. And a big reason to come and vote on those resolutions is we vote on the tax levy for the year. Now, as you can imagine, school districts don't do the best job advertising when the annual meeting's coming up, and also, you know, as you can see, we had this one in the middle of August when people aren't exactly focused on school issues. So the meeting Monday night was sparsely attended. There were about 24 people there. That includes the 10 members of the school board itself, and most of the others were principals at the local schools. Now, we passed 5 resolutions altogether. One was for salaries for school board members, president, treasurer, and clerk. They'll all get $500 a year for serving on the school board. All the other members will get $300 a year, plus $45 for every meeting they participate in. So a regular member could probably expect to make about $160 a month, which isn't bad for a part-time job, but granted you not obscene by any means, but little incentive there, so something to consider for anyone out there that might be thinking about running for the school board this next spring. Another resolution is the district will reimburse school board members for expenses they incur directly related to being a school board member. The district can sell surplus property to the public. The next annual meeting will be next August. And finally, the tax levy. Now, that was set at $11.7 million. $8.5 million of that is just regular taxes. $3 million of that is the building referendum. And as you can see, I mean, that's a good percentage of just the regular tax levy. So that referendum, that's going to have a much bigger impact on people's taxes than they might realize. Now, part of the reason why you might not realize it is because we just had a referendum expire last year. This one picks right back up where that one left off, so it'll be a little bit higher than you were paying in taxes last year, but you won't realize the full effect because you should have been getting a pretty good tax cut this year. There's also $72,000 for non-referendum debt. School districts are allowed to borrow a little bit of money without going to referendum. And then $125,000 for community services. Should have followed up on this one. Not quite sure what that means, but I'll have to look into that later. So Edgerton residents that wanted to weigh on that, well, sorry, I guess you're out of luck until next year. But again, you know, we'll have elections this coming spring, so I'll make sure to put a post up to remind people when those deadlines are coming up in case anyone is interested. You know, others in Rock County, though, you still have a chance to participate in your annual meetings this year. Milton's is on September 23rd. Evansville is on September 25th. Now, they haven't announced that yet, and it's not on their website, but Evansville always has 2 meetings a month. They're on Wednesdays, the second and fourth Wednesday. That's when they had their annual meeting last year, so we're kind of making an educated guess on that one. But remember, your school districts, they don't advertise these things. They don't put big ads in the paper, hey, everybody come out and vote on your tax levy. So pretty much what you're going to have to do is call these districts up and find out for yourself when these meetings are going to be taking place. Now, the meeting in Edgerton started off, before the annual meeting was a regular meeting. That's pretty typical. But this one started off with me confronting the school board about the new bleachers that went up in town. That came as a surprise to pretty much everyone in the community, and I did a little digging, and I confronted them with the facts. I'm not the only one that's wondering about those new bleachers. You know, that's a $712,000 project. And I know that because that school perception survey last spring explained that's what it would cost. It's no secret the district wanted those bleachers, but for one reason or another, it was not in the building referendum. There wasn't a single mention of it in all the maps or lists in that voter information packet either. So the voters approved a $40.6 million building referendum. That was to build and renovate the schools. They also approved a referendum to increase the operating budget by $1.25 million every year. Now that was specifically for, quote, additional space, recruiting and retaining staff, and enhancing educational opportunities. So I was pretty surprised when I saw those bleachers going up. And I started to wonder, where the heck did you find $700,000? You couldn't take that money from the building referendum because that money's earmarked. That operating referendum, though, well, you could spend that on anything you want because it just goes straight into that general fund. So ultimately, it doesn't matter that you said that money was to give teachers raises. It doesn't matter that you said that was to hire more teachers. It doesn't matter that you said it was for classrooms because we handed you a blank check. You decided to go and spend it on athletics instead of academics, bleachers instead of teachers. I know this because I confirmed it on the phone with the district office 2 weeks ago. That's not what that money was for, and you know it. If you wanted new bleachers, you should have put that in the building referendum. Instead, you pulled a bait and switch with that operating referendum. You got caught. Now, it's not illegal what you did, but it's definitely not right. Telling us you need more money for teachers and classrooms, and then spending it on a sports stadium. So what should we do now? I'm not just going to lay out a problem here. I see 3 options. We can cut the athletics department budget over the next several years so that money is paid back. 2, they can pay it back directly. Ticket sales, donations, fundraisers, whatever. Finally, you can reduce that levy by $712,000 this year and give the money back to the taxpayers you lied to in the first place. Obviously, it's up to you, but you need to do something. I want you to know one more thing, too. I live here in town. I'm not going to let you get away with these stunts anymore. That's all I got. Now, later during the annual meeting portion, Dr. Weiner gave a budget presentation about how the bleachers have always been part of the plan all along. By the way, he also mentioned that they're planning to replace the tennis courts, too, at a cost of $800,000. And that got even less support on that community survey last spring than the bleachers did. So brace for that.
And then capital maintenance, specifically stadium bleachers. It was brought up at citizen comment. We've talked about that for 4 years, 5 years, maybe more than that. That was part of it. Tennis courts is another one in the hopper. We've been talking about that for probably about the same time. These are big ticket items that there's no way we could carry this in our general fund budget.
Unfortunately, like I mentioned, that did not show up in the referendum question or any of the voter information materials. But after the meeting, one of the school board members confronted me about my speech. And she just couldn't understand why, first of all, what's my angle? Why do I care what they're doing with taxpayer money? I said, there's a lot of money we're talking about here. And they don't have a lot of pressure at these meetings to keep them accountable. I didn't see any other reporters there. She claimed there was one. He just wasn't sitting at the press table, but whatever. Us as the public, we need to hold our public officials' feet to the fire to make sure they do the right thing. She just couldn't understand that. And she also didn't understand why I don't think that new bleachers was an appropriate use for the operating referendum. Especially when it was meant to support classroom instruction. Again, just like Dr. Weiner, claiming that, this is part of the plan all along. Everybody knew about this. Again, was not part of the voter information packets, was not on the referendum question. Finally, she told me that the bleachers was maintenance. Replacing all the bleachers, essentially building a brand new stadium, counts as a maintenance project. And that was an interesting one. So anyway, that's why you got to show up to these meetings. Another referendum issue that's come up in Edgerton over the past couple weeks is our big building project. the $40.6 million referendum that's going to be building us new schools, yeah, that's already $300,000 over budget. And so J.P. Cullen sent some representatives to explain that they didn't realize exactly what they were getting into, even though they've been on the ground since 2016, and the cost estimator has been working on this project since 6 months before the referendum.
That budget was based on the SD level documents. The SD level documents were not fully engineered. We didn't have the topography. We didn't have the site utilities fully designed. So that budget was based on 20% drawings from the SD level. When the hard bids came in, that's where it showed that $300,000 delta.
We are currently within the overall referendum budget, so there's no concern there. We also have a 5% contingency, which is an industry standard at this point in the process.
Give some credit to our board members. They said they don't want any more surprises like this from our vendors, that when something starts changing, something's not exactly what they expected it to be, they need to come to the school board and report and explain exactly what's going on. So at least they aren't getting, our school board members aren't getting ambushed in the paper again like they did a couple weeks ago.
I sat on a building committee for our church this last year. Not a big project, but it was big in our eyes, and $1.5 million.
Yep.
Every 2 weeks we met. Every 2 weeks they gave us an update. This is where we're at. Oh, this one here went over a little bit, so we had to tap into the contingency. So the contingency went down just a little bit. Here's where we're at on it. We knew where we were at every 2 weeks. I guess I expect the same thing here. This is a bigger deal.
Yep.
There ought to be some simple way for us to be able to kind of know where we're at on this thing and not get caught off guard. That's what I don't want.
Sure.
Also, this won't come as a surprise to anybody who's paying attention to the real estate market right now, but turns out now is pretty much a terrible time to build anything.
People are busy right now. So, but we bid so many other projects, hard bid projects, and we have relationships with numerous subcontractors that we do a lot of work with, a bunch of them. So I'm confident that we will get good coverage in the bids.
One more thing, this happens at the end of the annual meeting. The regular school board president gets to put out some comments for the year. Our school board president's Matt Towns. I'm going to roll that here just because I know it's not going to get played anywhere else.
Well, this is the portion of the meeting where we usually hear words of encouragement for the upcoming year, or Thanksgiving for the past year, or other such rosy things that the president wants to talk about. Tonight, I only want to talk about patience as we deal with ongoing and upcoming things for the next year. We've asked everyone who is remotely involved with kindergarten or fifth grade or everyone in between to be patient in places and situations that are much different than what they're used to. Situations that seem strange and difficult to us, but those 5-year-olds don't know any different. Fifth graders are resilient, and they'll still be the great kids that they would have been over at community. So let's make sure that when they're in the basement of the high school or at the middle school, that we still get them the same great teaching and experiences that they would have had there. We also want to thank the middle school and high school staff and administration for being patient with their house guests for the next year until they settle into a new normal. But especially I want to ask everybody in the room to be patient with the board and with the administrators as we monitor and execute a $40 million project over the next year. We've already learned this is not going to go all according to plan. We know that in the next year we'll have some discussions and decisions that we haven't even imagined yet, probably. So we ask for patience. We all need patience this year. And probably the 10 folks you see sitting here might need it more than anybody. So we ask for patience. The good thing about patience is that usually means you're waiting for something, and the good part is we're waiting for something that is going to be well worth the wait. We don't need to talk about the details now. You guys all know the plans, but it's good to remember that this year's situation is only this year's situation. We'll be patient. We'll get through this. 13 months from now, we'll be finding ourselves in situations and facilities that'll help Edgerton continue and improve what we've always been doing here, which is serving our community and our kids better than anybody. So there you have it.
Hey, so big thanks to everybody that tried to tune in the other night when I was trying to live stream that event. I know it wasn't the best quality. The Wi-Fi at the school, the public Wi-Fi at the school was turned off that night, so I had to use my own personal MiFi. And Verizon doesn't have the best signal around the district. So hopefully the sound, I could tell the sound was coming through all right, but the frame rate wasn't exactly great on the video. But again, I mean, this is citizen journalism. Again, Facebook has really been pushing this concept. I've seen the ads popping up all the time, maybe just because I am a journalist, and so their algorithm is targeting me specifically. But this is important for the public to weigh in on this stuff. As a journalist, I've noticed over the past 10 years particularly that public officials have been tempted to lie more and more brazenly. 10 years ago, it was very common for a public official to tell you a bunch of facts with the intention of leading you to a false conclusion. And then a few years after that, they started saying no when they really meant yes, and yes when they really meant no. And today, we're seeing more and more that public officials are perfectly comfortable fabricating their own realities. And it's really easy for them to get away with it. The media is not as numerous or as skeptical, as cynical even, as they used to be and as they should be. So it's up to us in the public. I know here in Edgerton, a lot of people are talking about that $300,000 in the building referendum. That leads to some really good questions. Again, J.P. Cullen's been on the ground here for 2 years. There shouldn't be any surprises. Those new bleachers going up. A lot of people in town talking about that, asking questions. Where did that money come from? It wasn't in the referendum. That's why you got to show up to these meetings. Because just because there's people talking around town, that doesn't create any pressure for our public officials to act responsibly. When they go to those meetings, they're in a small conference room. The public doesn't turn out to those. The other night, when I spoke during the public comment period, that's the first time I've ever been at a school board meeting where somebody spoke during the public comment period. You got 10 people that sit on the school board section, and then the rest of the room, that's usually going to be another 10 people, usually a reporter from, the Gazette or the Reporter, who's not exactly going to be holding these people's feet to the fire. And everyone else in the room is either a principal or a teacher who's sitting on a committee everybody's on the same page. Everybody's on the same side. You as a member of the public, if you want to make sure that your public officials stay honest and are doing the right thing, you need to be there. These aren't bad people, but you put them in bad circumstances with lots of temptations. It's not like they're profiting personally from it. This is all public money going to public purposes, but when you're lying about what that money is going to be going to, well, that's wrong. And I'm pretty confident that if they had put the bleachers on the referendum, this town would have approved it. So if that were the case, who could complain that the bleachers are going up? They did not put it on the referendum. They kept this whole thing under wraps. And so that's just a symptom of the problems that happen when the public does not hold their officials responsible. So again, this is the Rock County Calendar. I'm a professional journalist, but this is my own personal experience in citizen journalism, and I hope it inspires other people out there to step up in their communities and do something similar here. Anybody can do this. The tools are out there. They're cheap. Everybody, you see live videos all the time on YouTube and Facebook. Anybody can do this, and I hope that you will consider doing this in your community. Thank you very much for joining me. Someday I plan on having more of these special reports periodically in the future. Good night.